All right. Well, welcome back to the Michael Lofton Show on Reason and Theology. So, this is likely a headline you did not hear about, but recently a Catholic Mass was celebrated by a bishop and numerous Catholic priests, in addition to concelebrated with a female priestess of the Anglican denomination present at the Mass, participated in the um, Eucharistic liturgy, received communion, was actually noted by the bishop. Her presence was noted, and all sorts of stuff went on. Again, you likely did not hear a whole lot about it, but I want to bring it to your attention because I think that it is something that people should be aware of and should certainly express their concerns about if they see this continuing to happen again in the future, because there are some things in the Code of Canon Law that speaks about these issues that you should be aware of. So let me go ahead and share my screen so we can take a look at when and what took place. By the way, for those of y'all tuning in, hit that like button and the subscribe button. I would really appreciate your support of the channel. Okay, so here's the headline. Anglican woman priest concelebrates at the Catholic Mass, creating the Archdiocese of Chapeco and the seating of its first metropolitan bishop. This is in Brazil. So please forgive me if I'm not pronouncing the names correctly here. Now, of course, from the Catholic perspective, women cannot be ordained. That comes from Ordinatio Sacerdotalis, where Pope John Paul II spoke definitively on the matter and said that women cannot be ordained. And so, for that reason, of course, Catholics would not consider a woman priest to actually be a priest. Now, some Anglican communions do believe in female priesthood, and so they will consider her to be a priest. Be that as it may, she participated in concelebrating at a Catholic liturgy. Concelebrating is when you have multiple priests celebrating together. Okay, here you can actually see a picture of her at the altar. A little bit of a better picture available here. You can see her with this blue or purple stole at the altar. Looks like she's receiving communion here. And here she's part of the procession. So let's take a look at what's going on. An Anglican woman priest was permitted to concelebrate the Eucharist at a Catholic Mass held to celebrate the creation of the Archdiocese of Capeco and the seating of its first bishop. So they just created an archdiocese here, and there's an installation of the bishop. And so that's what the ceremony is. So on the 9th of February, so not very long ago, the Reverend Vivian de Oliveira, a priest of the Anglican Episcopal Church of Brazil, Diocese Sul Occidental, dressed in a cassock alb with a blue stole, joined the 80 Catholic priests and 7 bishops in the procession at the start of the service. So not only do you have 80 Catholic priests present, but 7 bishops present. So a whole bunch of priests and bishops mixed in with the lady priestess. And she was seated with the other clergy around the altar and took part in the service of installation and the concelebration of the Eucharist, and receive the sacraments at St. Anthony's Cathedral in Capeco in Santa Catarina state in southern Brazil. So participated in the service, in the Eucharist, received the Eucharist. All of which, of course, is not permitted in Catholicism. So a lot of mistakes here, a lot of problems. In his sermon, the new Archbishop, the Most Reverend Don Odelir Jose Magri, noted the presence of the IEAB minister among the clergy. So he specifically calls her out, and notes her presence there. And he says, and he welcomed her active participation in the service as a sign of unity among Christians. Let's just stop there. So the bishop, in the presence of many other bishops, in the presence of 80 Catholic priests, not only has her there dressed as a priest, not only has her participate in the service, not only has her participate in the confection of the Eucharist, which, of course, from the Catholic perspective, she can't, right? But pretending to, simulating a sacrament, I guess, if you will. But he even encouraged it and highlighted it and brought it up as a sign of unity. Sign of unity. Again, I don't know where Ordinatio Sacerdotalis factors into this. Maybe at some point the bishop will elaborate further. Again, Ordinatio Sacerdotalis is the document by John Paul II that teaches infallibly from the Catholic perspective that women cannot be ordained priests. So, not exactly sure how a bishop could encourage something that goes against what his own church says to be an infallible teaching. Okay. The Portuguese language news service ACI contacted the diocese after the service asking whether the presence of Miss de Oliveira violated Canon 908, which forbids Catholic priests to concelebrate the Eucharist with clergy not in full communion with the Catholic Church. And just quickly read Canon 908. Catholic priests are forbidden to celebrate the Eucharist with priests or ministers. Notice that. Or ministers, because it recognizes that not all of them have valid orders, of churches or ecclesiastical communities, that would be Protestants, which do not have full communion with the Catholic Church. So, now I know there are a fair amount of Eastern Catholic priests who completely violate this canon constantly and will concelebrate with Eastern Orthodox all the time. I'm aware that that takes place pretty frequently among some Eastern Catholic clergy. I think that's a little different, however, because in that case, you actually have males. Yes, it is a violation of the canon, but still, and I believe you'll find the same thing in the Eastern Code of Canon Law, but you'll, at least in that case, it's actually a validly ordained priest, whereas in this case, according to the Catholic perspective, this isn't even a priest. So I would say not only is this perhaps a violation of this canon and canon law, but again, how is it not a violation of infallible Catholic doctrine? How is it not implicitly a denial of infallible doctrine? If you look here again at Ordinatio Sacerdotalis, for those who haven't seen it, the Pope says, wherefore, in order to remove all doubt regarding a matter of great importance, a matter which pertains to the Church's divine constitution itself, in virtue of my ministry of confirming the brethren, I declare that the Church has no authority whatsoever to confer priestly ordination on women, and that this judgment is to be definitively held by all the Church's faithful. So I don't know how the bishop's position is not an indirect denial of that doctrine. Archbishop Magri released a statement in response on the 13th of February, noting that he had already communicated to the Apostolic Nunciature in Brazil regards to the circumstances surrounding this isolated incident of inadvertent violation of liturgical norms. Was that all it is? Just an inadvertent violation of liturgical norms? Does it maybe point to a deeper problem here? A deeper theological problem. We renew our commitment to doctrinal orthodoxy and liturgical orthopraxis and will make efforts to avoid future errors, he said. You can see a Portuguese version of it here, which I got the Googler to translate for me. Good old Googler. It does a Google translation in reference to what occurred during the solemn mass for the installation of the Archdiocese of Capeco and my inauguration as Metropolitan Archbishop. We inform you that we have already communicated with the Apostolic Nunciature in Brazil about the circumstances of this isolated incident of inadvertent violation of liturgical norms. We renew our commitment to doctrinal orthodoxy and liturgical orthopraxy, and we will endeavor to avoid future errors. We implore divine blessings upon our particular church as we continue united in our evangelizing mission. Signed by the Archbishop. Another article offers just a little bit more details, but again, you can see the picture here of the lady priest. Vivian de Oliveira, minister of the Anglican Episcopal Church of Brazil, concelebrated the installation mass of the Archdiocese of Capeco. The minister entered wearing a blue tunic and stole along with the priests and bishops in the entrance procession, stood in the presbytery, and actively participated in the Eucharistic consecration and received communion. Canon 908 prohibits Catholic ministers from doing this. Catholic ministers lawfully administer the sacraments only to the Catholic faithful, who likewise lawfully receive them only from Catholic ministers, Canon 844 says. So obviously she, shouldn't be there concelebrating, and she also shouldn't be receiving communion, according to the Code of Canon Law. The Mass was celebrated by the Archbishop of Capeco. He spoke of the ecumenical meaning of the presence of religious authorities in the celebration. He mentioned the presence of the minister of the IEAB, showing her at the altar, and the pastor of the Renovar M. Cristo Church, who was sitting on the second pew of the church along with the other faithful. So I guess that's a Protestant pastor. I wonder if he was attempting to confect the Eucharist too. At the celebration, Father Francois, Chancellor of the Archdiocese, read the Pope's decree on the creation of the Archdiocese. Kneeling before the altar, Don Odelir professed his faith and reaffirmed his belief in the truths of the Word of God and the teachings of the Church. He also took an oath of fidelity, committing himself to maintain communion with the Church, preserve the integrity of the faith, and promote ecclesiastical discipline. Now, I got to point something out for you. Okay. Not only that bit about him taking the oath of fidelity, preserving ecclesiastical discipline in light of what we've seen from the Code of Canon Law, but also in that oath of fidelity, he makes the profession of faith, and he accepts secondary objects of infallibility in the second concluding paragraph of the Professio Fidei, where he accepts all those things that are connected to divine revelation, and he maintains that they are to be held definitively. Well, one of those teachings is that women cannot be ordained priests. So the irony here is, in the very service where he's professing the oath of fidelity and the profession of faith, he's violating it as he's doing it. So I guess my question would be, on something so fundamental and so relevant to what you're actually doing during the service, which is affirming the profession of faith, how do you not know this? Like, how do you not know this violates canon law? How do you not know this goes against infallible Catholic doctrine? Like, how are you made a bishop? How are you appointed a metropolitan of a diocese, an archdiocese, and you don't know this? How does this happen? Does this maybe point to the process of selecting bishops at this point is so low and so faulty that this is what slips through the cracks? And I can't say this is an isolated event. I can't say it's a one-off thing. I think the process for selecting a bishop needs to be completely revamped from top to bottom, because it seems like so many of these individuals who have received episcopal consecration still don't know the basics of the faith. And you can't give what you don't have. You can't be in a position of teaching the faith to people when you don't know it. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know for the life of me how this guy was ever made a bishop, let alone appointed an archbishop. And in the very service where he's professing the profession of faith, violates it. I don't understand that. Be that as it may, let's continue with the article. The Mass was concelebrated by around 80 priests and 7 bishops from Santa Catarina. And then it lists them there. The Anglican Episcopal Church of Brazil in Western Santa Catarina published a statement congratulating the Archdiocese for its elevation. And by the way, I have to point out, he wasn't just made a bishop. I think he was made a bishop in 2010. It's just that during this service, he was appointed to this new diocese. He's not a new bishop. Let's double check. But I'm pretty sure he was made a bishop in 2010, which would mean 14 to 15 years he's been a bishop. And that makes you wonder, how do you not know the basics of Catholicism after 15 years of being a bishop? So yeah, let's see. Ordained bishop in 2010. How does this happen? How does this happen? And are we really going to argue this is a one-off thing? Of course it's not. Of course it's not. We've seen this very same problem multiple times. And it makes you wonder, okay, if you got this wrong, what else do you not know about the faith? Right? That, it's like me saying, I'm now going to have a job as a mechanic, but I don't know what an alternator is. I don't know how to change oil. But I'm now not only going to have a job as a mechanic, I'm going to be over a mechanic shop, overseeing everything that takes place there. How does this happen? Okay, so let's continue with the article. Referring to what occurred during the solemn mass for the installation and my inauguration, we inform you that we've already communicated with the Apostolic Nunciature in Brazil. It's interesting, he only makes this comment after the news reaches out to him. I didn't see anywhere where he released an official statement apologizing and saying, hey, I caught this mistake that I made, and I want to make y'all aware that I made this mistake, and I apologize. I don't think that happened. We renew our commitment, he says, to doctrinal orthodoxy. And that's commendable. I very much commend the bishop for renewing his commitment to doctrinal orthodoxy and orthopraxy, which ironically he was doing at that mass where this occurred. I commend that. But my thing is, should it have ever come to that? Should this be even needed? When you reach this point where you're consecrated a bishop, are these mistakes that shouldn't be made? I think that's a fair question to ask. Okay. So again, here's the pictures, but that's all I got. I don't know if there's any more information out there. I wasn't able to find anything else. It doesn't appear there are any reports about this in the Catholic world. I only found a couple, and it appears to be mostly from Anglican sources, aside from whatever this one is, which I think is Catholic. I think it's associated with CNA because it looks identical to their CNA website. So I think that's a Catholic source and then an Anglican source. Aside from that, I haven't seen really anything about it. So I wanted to bring that to y'all's attention and show you some of the difficulties here so you can be aware. And the next time it happens, you can perhaps bring it to the attention of the bishop that, this is something that the Catholic Church says cannot be done. Shifting gears very briefly, I do want to mention that the last few days, Pope Francis has been in the hospital. He has been hospitalized. There are some updates here. Pope Francis was admitted to Rome's Gemelli Hospital on Friday, February 14th, to undergo testing and treatment for bronchitis, the Vatican said. Now, he's 88 years old. So, this is a very serious issue. And if you look at some of their updates that they have here, this is from CNA. They do have a pretty recent update. As he prepares to spend his third night in Gemelli Hospital, the Holy Father remains in stable condition as he continues the therapeutic diagnostic process prescribed by the medical staff. This morning, the Pope received the Eucharist and followed the Holy Mass on television. He spent the afternoon alternating between reading and resting, according to the Holy See press office. Just a few days ago, they did mention that he had a peaceful night, had breakfast, read several newspapers, so just kind of in his routine, had no febrile episodes, had a restful night. They do also mention in a previous update that they have found some improvement in some values. It's pretty vague, but in other words, they're just showing that there are some signs of improvement, but they didn't get any more specific than that. And so it's a pretty serious matter. Certainly encouraged to pray for his health. But there are live updates, appearing at least once a day. So I'm sure we'll find out more. Looks like his face is pretty swollen. I've seen a lot of pictures where his face is swelling. And some people were mentioning that right before he was admitted into the hospital, that there's a lot of facial swelling, and they're saying that might be related to this issue. But you can certainly see a lot of swelling here. So it's really sad to see anybody go through that, especially Pope Francis. So certainly keep him in your prayers. Pray for his good health. Anyways, wanted to bring this to your attention. Last thing that I wanted to make y'all aware of was this GoFundMe that I created for in-person interviews. If you want to see more in-person interviews on this channel, I just did one with Father John Brown, but I'd like to do some more. I will need some additional studio equipment and funds to also fly people out to do those in-person interviews. If that is something that you want to see more on this channel, check out the link to GoFundMe that I have already in the show notes. Click on it and support it. I would greatly appreciate your assistance. And of course, don't forget to hit the subscribe button while you're at it, and the like button too. All right, that's going to do it for today. I will see y'all tomorrow. Hey, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the content. Don't forget to hit the subscribe button, the like button, and if you want to support the channel, visit patreon.com/Reason and Theology.